Let's move on onto the Twitter. I just wanted to go over some of the stuff that I saw. You let me know what you think. This is from Ryan Lundquist. It says, if I can't sell it for what I want, I'll rent it. A seller told me that about her owner occupied house. I don't have stats on this, but I've been hearing this more lately from sellers and even property managers who are seeing an influx in canceled listings become rentals. So, yes, this is in the 2006 or the 2008 housing crisis. Many people who couldn't sell their homes decided to turn them into rentals. Most of those people were professionals that were moving to different parts of the world or the country, and they just couldn't, they didn't have to, they were okay carrying two mortgages. And they felt that at some point in time, the prices were going to go back to what they paid. They refused to bring any money to the table to close and to sell at a bad deal for them. And I think they were all proven right. I talked to a fellow that I used to be in business with who had a property management company. We would do single family rentals. He told me that last year was a challenging year and 2021 was a challenging year because many of the people finally ended up selling their homes after years of waiting and renting them out. My problem with renting single family homes that you once lived in, that you have a strong feeling or affinity for, and it was never thought of as an investment, is number one, sometimes many of the people when we were renting them at that point in time weren't even clearing their own mortgage while they were renting it. And number two, they didn't want to do maintenance. The landlords did not want to do maintenance on the properties. And the more and more the property gets beat up and less gets taken care of, the less that it becomes an attractive property when you want to sell it. It's just a beat up house. It's just they call it lived in look. And so in this case, do I think that people will do the same? Well, yeah, I think some people will. Those that can afford it, but they would have done so anyway. Um, I just, I'm not surprised. Would you be surprised? I mean, like between 2 and 3% interest rates, if you didn't go crazy on a house and now you've got to sell, well, you don't have to sell, you can rent it, and the rents right now are crazy. I can see it. Kira Mason, interesting, Southeast Pennsylvania showings and pendings both dipped slightly last week over the previous. It feels like the initial burst of activity after the holidays may now be starting to moderate. I'm interested in seeing how the next few weeks play out. Well, so let me tell you about my situation here in St. Louis, Missouri. I had a house listed, or I had a condo listed for sale. I got it under contract within 3 days of when I listed it, and that was on a Saturday. That was this weekend, and then there were showings. There were a lot of showings. I wasn't really concerned about it, and I also lost a buyer lead in the sense that I had a buyer hooked up with listing emails, and she finally decided that she wasn't interested in buying a home. She really got beat up. She was looking for a house in 2022, July, May, June, July, and the properties, like one of the houses we looked at, they were listing it for like 200, and it went for 260, 270, and she couldn't afford that. Am I sad to see her go? Yes, but I knew she wasn't. I knew things weren't going her way. So anyway, um, if I listed a house right now, I better, as a seller, I better have it right at the value of the home. I better, if I'm lucky, I mean, if I'm really trying, I'm going to go a little bit less than what I think it's totally worth, because I'm going to need to get people through the door, because I feel like there's not as many buyers right now. Normally in the morning at 8 o'clock, I get all my lists for buyers that are looking at things, and then my list has been cut in like half. I mean, it's very bad. So, seasonally right now is not the strongest time of the year to buy a house. And it's also not the time of the year to sell a house. If you've got a house that's maybe a estate sale, that's fine, but you're not putting the most premium properties out there for sale, because there's not, the buyers, nobody wants to move in February, at least in St. Louis. So I don't look, and just for the record, I don't look week to week on showings or pendings week to week. I care more about inventory and how that's working through the system. And I do that on a monthly basis. That's just me. I mean, most contracts are for 30 days or more on the closing. So a monthly basis for me is pretty good. I'm not criticizing Kira here. I just don't look at it that way. Lance Lambert, this was an interesting poll. I'll give you my answers as we go through it. Okay. It says, do you believe the U.S. housing activity has already bottomed? I'm asking about home sales, not home prices. And I voted very unlikely. I didn't like that one. I'm sorry. And that was 29%. So that was the biggest one. That was what I wrote. I think house prices have to go down significantly more. The next question: do you believe that U.S. home prices have bottomed? For this one, I'm asking about national home prices, not national home sales. I said very unlikely. I thought so. It says, do you believe the 30-year fixed mortgage rate has already picked? We're a little more than 1 percentage point below the November high. I put somewhat likely. That was 33%, and it is leading. But I thought about it this way, and I'm not ashamed to tell you what I'm thinking. I feel like the U.S. economy is going to go into a recession based on the rates being raised previously. And so, with that happening, the Fed only has the lever of lowering rates, or the pivot, as everyone's talking about. I don't think it's a great plan, but that's what everybody's banking on. So the problem that we saw in the housing market is when we saw that spike in the sevens. I mean, the spread on the borrowing rate versus the 30-year fix was like historically high. That means the difference between what the Fed was actually at the discount window, what they were charging, and what the rate was. I mean, it was really high. So that was weird. That's come down now. I mean, rates were raised. What was it, 50 basis points last month? And yet, the mortgage rates are still coming down. That just shows you how much of the spread that was in there for a while. It was kind of crazy. And then finally, do you believe that peak inflation CPI reading is behind us? I am a Peter Schiff disciple. And so he says that even when the Fed pivots and lowers rates, that inflation is going to go through the roof because the value of the dollar is lower. I believe in him. This is what he says, and this is what I'll go with. But you can see I'm very much in the minority at 12.2%. I just thought it was interesting. I participated. Moving on. This is Darth Powell. Now this is 2 tweets, okay? And I just want to put them together because it's the same chart, but I don't know if it makes a lot of sense. So it says GFC, we're going to go with great financial crisis, peak mortgage rates 7/2006, peak house prices 6/2006, bottom home prices 1/2012. So what he's saying is it took all the way till 2012 for the bottom to show in house prices after the mortgage rates were high and after house prices were high. Okay. Now this is GGFC, so I'm assuming that this is the new one. The peak mortgage rates occurred 11/2022. 2022, yeah. The peak house prices were 7/2022, which I believe that. I was out there, and I would say that's definitely true. The bottom home prices are, we don't know yet. The peak mortgage rates. So then let's look at the chart, okay? Now, so here's where it was. So here's the prices peak 36 months after the first sustained rate increase. So here is the sustained rate, here's the prices peaking, and here's the rate increase. Okay, and then 55 months prices to the bottom. And then we're looking here is how long will it take at prices peak 18 months after first sustained rate increase. So that means like what are we going to see going forward? Is it going to, home prices are going to keep falling? And then somebody says, so then this is a second tweet. It's not 2008. You're right. It's more like 2006. So, you tell me what you think in the chat. Put it in the comment section. I'd be interested to see what you think. The way it's ramped up, if it's going to be like every action has an equal and opposite reaction, like physics, then it's going to be very terrible.